Hey everybody, I'm Zac.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth
on Now You Know. We're brought to you by abetterrouteplanner.com. Use their link in the show notes below to get a 30-day free trial to the premium app.
And we're sponsored by BigBattery.com with the best battery prices in the USA, guaranteed. If you've got something you need to power, from homes to cars, RVs to boats, and much more, BigBattery.com has you covered, offering the newest battery tech. Use the code NowYouKnow to save 5% off your purchase today at BigBattery.com.
And we're brought to you by EcoWare.us. We've got...
you get a new shirt.
You're
the Techno King.
Well, I'm not the Techno King. Elon is the Techno King, of Tesla. So I could be the Techno King of something else.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got lots of brand new designs, so you can go check those out over at ecoware.us. And if you buy something, we carbon offset the production, the shipping, and the life cycle of every product. And we plant 10 trees for every single order, so it is extraordinarily carbon negative, so you can feel good about your purchase. All right, so 2021 Q1 earnings call for Tesla. Exciting stuff.
Really is.
Let's get into it.
Yeah. What we were expecting. I mean, the first quarters for the past couple years have typically been, lower revenue because car sales are seasonal. Colder weather doesn't lead to as many auto sales in general. So you wouldn't be blamed for thinking that this Q1 for Tesla would also be lower revenue and income. But we knew from the delivery numbers announced earlier this month that deliveries were a record high. So we were expecting record earnings. And
we got some amazing numbers. Almost all the numbers we're going to be talking about here, we're going to be comparing to year over year. That means that we're not going to compare them to last quarter because we want to compare apples to apples as much as possible. Now, you could argue that Q1 of 2020 only had about a month of COVID, which actually makes these Tesla 2021 Q1 numbers all the more amazing. So let's check this out.
All right, so let's start with automotive revenue. That's the way most people think of Tesla, right? It's a car company. So let's talk about that. $9 billion in Q1, up 75% year over year. This is absolutely incredible.
It would be incredible for a startup, let alone a company worth $700 billion.
Now, I hear what a lot of Tesla shorts are saying right now. What about the $518 million in regulatory credits that Tesla got handed to them by their competitors? What's going to happen when those go away?
And I mean, we have two things to say about that. Number one, if you were consistently getting hundreds of millions of dollars from your competitors every quarter, well, then you're doing something right and your competitors are doing something wrong. I would be much more worried about Tesla's competitors at this point than Tesla itself. It's like, oh, what about all that extra money you're getting? Oh, no.
What happens when daddy stops giving it to you?
It's like, I think they've taken that all into account.
Yeah.
Like if you knew that you were going to get, some allowance from some rich benefactor who is also your competitor in a rate, like it's as if your competitor's giving you a head start.
Well, it'd be one thing if it was like the government handing them this money, because then you could say like, well, when the government stops giving you the money, but it's your competitors. So they're digging themselves into a hole while they keep building you up.
Well, and also, funny you should mention governments giving you money. A lot of their competitors, not GM, but pretty much all of their other competitors do get money every time they sell an EV.
That's true.
From the government. So that's kind of an interesting point. Tesla doesn't get that incentive anymore.
That's true. And number two, the regulatory credits went up by $117 million from Q4, but Tesla's gross profit went up by $149 million. So guess what that means?
Even though Tesla paid Elon a 2018 CEO award of $299 million in Q1, Tesla lowered costs by $331 million.
Yeah, so even though Tesla lowered the ASP, that is the average selling price of their cars, by 13% year over year, their auto gross margin went up 95 basis points year over year to 26.5%.
But wait a minute, their average sales price went down by 30%. That must mean that they don't have enough demand and they have to lower the prices of their cars.
So the ASP went down primarily because they stopped selling as many Model S's and X's, which were more expensive cars. But even though those high profit cars weren't sold in as many numbers, they still made more profit. So stop, please, with the stupid narrative that Tesla is only profitable because of regulatory credits. It just isn't true. All right, but let's hit some of the big numbers here. Total revenue for Q1, $10.3 billion, up 74% year over year.
Total gross profit for Q1, $2.2 billion, up 79% year over year.
Total Gap gross margin for Q1, 21.3%, up 70 basis points year over year.
Now, what's basis points?
Well, you could call it a percent or you could call it 100 basis points. Doesn't it sound better if you're an analyst to say basis points?
It does sound better than 0.7%.
Right.
It's okay, so it's a nicer way to say it.
It's like another language they make up so that us mortals don't understand what they're talking about.
Gotcha. Okay, well, now I know what basis points are.
Operating income for Q1, $594 million, up 110% year over year.
GAAP earnings per share for Q1 was 39 cents per share, up from 2 cents per share year over year. That's 1,850%.
So let's talk about cash flow. Free cash flow has been awesome for Q2, Q3, and Q4.
Wait a minute. That's bad.
What's bad?
It's an outflow of $1.2 billion this quarter. That's not good. Where did all the cash go? Was there a burglary? Was there a heist?
Remember this key fact, folks. If you've been watching Tesla Time News, you know where the money went. Elon took that cash and bought a little thing called Bitcoin. Maybe you've heard of it?
Oh, I mean, that should be counted somewhere, right?
Well, the thing is, GAAP accounting, which is generally accepted accounting principles, it does not let you count that as cash because, well, it's not cash. I mean, cash is a fiat currency like dollars or euros. They don't know what cryptocurrencies are yet in the accounting world, really. So that Bitcoin, which, by the way, has doubled in value in the last few months, is basically considered nothing. It's as if they bought a pile of baseball cards.
I see. And until Tesla sells it, it doesn't show up on the books as anything valuable.
Right.
Now, this is kind of wild because Tesla knew that if they were to buy Bitcoin, it would look like an outflow of cash.
Right.
And people might not understand that that was the case. But of course, we know that the Bitcoin that they bought doubled in value since they bought it. So It's not like the money went away. It could tomorrow if Bitcoin, completely went to zero.
Although we did learn on the earnings call, Zachary Kirkhorn, the CFO, talked about the fact that they've sold 10% of their holdings. So they bought $1.5 billion. It went up to probably around $3 billion. Mm-hmm. They sold 10% of it, so they now have $300 million.
So they're kind of hedging their bets.
They're hedging their bets a little bit, yeah. Very interesting. So while the media is reporting that Tesla is having less cash, we know that this chart doesn't tell the whole story. I estimate if you count the Bitcoin, that Tesla probably has about $20 billion in the bank or in their Bitcoin wallet.
Including the Bitcoin wallet. So, I mean...
Don't lose the wallet, Elon.
So, I mean, what if they bought gold or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what accounting principles count as cash other than, you know.
I get that it should be cash, but, you couldn't say...
Well, I mean, you can buy a factory and then but then it's hard to value that because...
Sure, but, that's not something you buy in order to sell it at a higher value, like gold. Like, if they bought gold... I don't know. Is there some kind of accounting principle that would say, okay, well, here's another bar that we're going to put on top, and that's the risky non-cash?
Well, it is in their books. It's just that it's not counted there under GAAP. And I think that since most analysts are using GAAP, like GAAP income, and they don't see it there, then they're like, so I guess they didn't make as much money. And that's and that's why they took a risk because, it's not showing up in the normal places on a financial sheet.
Now, do you think that in the future, if cryptocurrency becomes more of a standard practice of something that companies would buy,
maybe
that GAAP would either change or that we would move away from GAAP to...
Yeah, I have no idea. I mean, you got to imagine that things are going to change with cryptocurrencies, but how fast and who knows? Yeah, great question. Mm-hmm. If you're an accountant, comment down below.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Now, I want to talk about global vehicle inventory. Check out this line here.
Oh, no. It's going down. Things that go down are bad.
No, that's a good thing. As Elon has said many times, the longer you keep a car on your lot, the more it costs you. So you want to get that car made and into a customer's hands as quickly as possible. And look at what Tesla has been able to do. They've lowered the days of supply from 25 last year down to 8 days in Q1, a reduction of 68%.
So, I mean, this points out that they're able to get cars to people a lot quicker.
I think this is Shanghai.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think this is because they've got really fast supplies going on in China, and it's just really dramatically cut their delivery times.
And by having a shorter time between making the car and selling the car, well, they're on the hook for all the money.
Exactly. I mean, right now, when you make a car at Fremont and sell it in, say, Germany, it's got to go on a boat.
Right.
And it sits on the boat, for weeks.
So, I mean, this is equivalent to, I go to the store and I buy the lemons and the sugar, and then I come home, and right now I'm out money.
Right.
I haven't sold any lemonade yet. So, even after you make the lemonade, you squeeze it and it's in the pitcher sitting out there on a nice hot day, until someone comes to buy it, you're out that money if no one, were to pick it up. But more complicated than that is that Tesla didn't upfront that money.
Oh, yeah. I mean, let's talk about traditional car dealers.
Yeah.
If you're a dealer and you buy the car from me, let's say Ford, and now it sits on your lot, you're paying a loan on that car.
Right.
How could any traditional car dealer do better than 8 days from made it to in the customer's hands?
I mean, that's amazing, especially since, I mean, yeah, they only have Giga Shanghai and Fremont.
Yeah. Wait till each new factory comes online.
Because then you can deliver the cars closer to the factory.
Yes.
And that's going to reduce the time as well, because transit does take some time. I mean, but 8 days, how can you do better than that?
I know.
Amazing.
All right, let's take a look at Tesla's energy storage, their solar, and their batteries deployed. Now, you might look at this and have mixed feelings, because while solar was up to 92 megawatts, batteries came in at only 445 megawatt hours. But here's the thing. Storage is lumpy.
And that's because it's not just Powerwalls, which are very small batteries. It's also huge, ginormous projects, kind of like the Hornsdale battery. Right. Those scale projects, whenever they finish, that's when Tesla counts them. Right. So the data is always going to be pretty lumpy. And Q4 of last year, Tesla finished a lot of big battery projects. So that could be why that number is a little bit smaller Q1. But if you look year over year, it's a 71% increase.
Yeah. That's, again, huge for a company that's already this big to have had that big of an increase in 1 year. But let's go back to solar for a second, because I think that gets overlooked. It gets lumped in with batteries all the time. Let's just pull it out by itself. Now, we've been in kind of a doldrum starting in 2019 when Tesla solar deployment dropped. You can see that here really well in Hypercharts. And shout out to Hypercharts. Awesome charts if you want to see how a company's doing. But now the last couple of quarters, things are picking up again. And get this, solar roof deployments are up 9 times year over year.
And I think we're starting to see solar roof really starting to take off. And it's going to be a huge revenue stream for Tesla as time goes on.
Now, Elon mentioned during the call that they made some mistakes when it comes to complex roofs. So they were saying that people would go online and say, yeah, I have a 3,000 square foot roof. How much does it cost? The Tesla website would spit out a number, like, $20,000 or whatever. And then when it came time to actually create the plans for the roof and give them the final number, Tesla would oftentimes come back with a higher number, sometimes as much as double. And a lot of people were like, wait, what? And Elon kind of said on the call, they've had some troubles because complex roofs are completely different than simple roofs.
So, I mean, if you're ever driving down a road and you're looking at houses or whatever, and you look at the roofs, there's really simple roofs, which, might be completely flat on top, or maybe it's just 2 pieces and it's just your standard preschool looking roof. As soon as you start to add anything complex to that, hips and dormers, any sort of like, oh, this roof comes in and it meets this other roof. You get a much more complex roof. Now, this is true in the world of roofing.
Exactly.
Regular old tiles.
We've roofed together, and when you're going on like a flat section, you rock and roll.
Pop, 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 pop. You're just going right along with the nail gun.
As soon as you hit the dormer, it's like everything's a cut.
You're cutting everything, and then you're up on a roof, mind you, and you're like, oh your knife is getting dull, and you're looking down at it like, oh, what the heck. Here, it's even more complicated because all of these cuts aren't going to be happening with the utility knife, which is kind of a good thing after having done it myself. You're going to have to cut each of these glass tiles, and it's going to get a little bit more complicated. So I think that is where kind of the price difference is coming in. And also keep in mind, a lot of people who are getting solar roof first have complex roofs because they're high-end houses.
Yeah, high-end houses are, if you look at them someday, the reason they're so pretty is because there's lots of stuff going on at the roof line, right? There's all these dormers and pitch changes and trim, and that takes forever. And so your labor costs go way up because instead of knocking it out in a day, you're going to be there for at least a week.
Right. So what I'm excited about is solar roofs going in on more simple roofs where there aren't as many dormers and skylights and stuff like that. Just a simple roof, I think they could get it done really cheaply and quickly.
All right, let's talk about the number of Supercharger stations. Now, again, this might seem boring and unsexy, but the number of Supercharger stations, 2,699 worldwide, is up 41% year over year.
And just to put this into perspective, I mean, there are billion-dollar companies like Electrify America and Ionity who only build fast charging stations, and they can't build them this fast.
Yeah. Again, this is just another one of the many moats that Tesla has built into their business model.
Another cool factoid from the earnings letter, 98% of the cars that customers trade in when buying a Tesla are ICE cars. That is internal combustion engine vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that they would be like, oh, I'm trading in my Bolt or I'm trading in my Leaf. But no, for the most part, it's Toyotas and Hondas that people are trading in. And it's because they're probably keeping their Bolts and Leafs as their second cars.
Because, frankly, they last.
Exactly.
It's not like, when you finally drive that car into the ground, you're like, whoo, and the
It made it
muffler
to the
falls
dealer.
off, Like, and you're just like, oh, thank God that one's over. I mean, I still have my Leaf. The range keeps going down, but it keeps driving. So,
Exactly.
hey, I'll take it.
And speaking of car sales, this chart is really cool. Take a look at this. That red line there, starting in 2017, that is the Tesla Model 3. And the blue line is the BMW 3 Series. The gray line is the Mercedes E-Class. The light green line is the Audi Q5, and the dark green line is the Audi A6. So, to sum this up, even without a European factory, the Model 3 is the best-selling premium sedan in the world.
That's amazing.
Mic drop.
I mean, they're competing with BMW, Mercedes, Audi. I mean, how can you? I mean, go back like 10 years, go back 5 years, and this would seem impossible.
Right.
You'd go like, yeah, I don't think. I mean, it's an EV.
Right.
Plus, I mean, you're talking global sales. I don't know.
Well, and you're talking these premium brands have had all the time in the world to become known. I mean, I said those names. Even if you have never driven one, you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Mercedes E-Class, and they beat them.
And I just want to point out, lots of people still have not heard of Tesla.
Right.
I still go through life and people go, what's Tesla again?
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, it's a car company. And they're like,
Happened to me yesterday.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I mean, that is the amazing part here, is that Tesla is able to outcompete these brands that are just, you're born and pretty much somewhere along the line, they just stamp that into your brain. You know what Audi is now.
Right.
Why do I know what that is?
I know.
Crazy.
Nice little tidbit in the letter that the Giga Texas is on track for production later this year. Just nice to see it in print.
Yeah. So that could either be Model Y, maybe some Cybertrucks.
Cybertruck.
Rolling off the line.
Yeah. This little tidbit, which again seems boring, this is basically saying that the domestic supply sourcing ratio for Giga Shanghai is over 90%. What does that mean?
So that means that the supply of what is going into Giga Shanghai is coming locally, meaning from within China.
Right. When it first opened, most of the supply was coming from other countries.
Right. And so this means that Tesla is seeing a vast reduction in cost because they, if you ship things overseas, you have to pay for the shipping. You probably have to pay some form of tariff or some, tax on it. If you're doing it all within the country, I mean, carbon footprint, that gets completely ignored with gap accounting as well. But you're going to have much lower costs.
Yeah. And again, this is something that most people aren't going to even pay attention to, but it's why Tesla can be so competitive.
A nice fun graph here of the improvements in the Model S range over time. It's just steadily boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, they're not resting on their laurels. Oh, and used Tesla sales. Check this out. If we annualize Q1, they're huge because why? People are buying the newer models, turning in their old ones.
I don't know if I'd believe this chart. Maybe Q1's a big used car selling quarter.
Maybe. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah.
So then we got to the actual earnings call, and
It was kind of a sleeper. Nothing too exciting. No bombastic back and forth between Elon and any analysts or anything like that. The audio quality seems to be getting worse on these calls, so it's really hard to listen to it. Everything just sounds like you're talking like this, and it's like, I don't really want to listen to this. So
and also Elon forgot to unmute his phone a couple times.
Yeah. So I mean, you can hear his child in the background a couple times. I just wish they could have nicer microphones.
I wish they were all in the same room.
Or just better look, I don't think that it's Elon's responsibility to get a nicer microphone, but someone at Tesla has to be in charge of or knows what a microphone is. So can we just please have nicer
gear?
So terrible. But anyway, let's talk about some of the stuff that happened in that earnings call.
Elon made an opening statement, as he usually does. Let me just find some little tidbits here. One was that Elon said they've had record production deliveries. Demand is the best they've ever seen. They think the Model Y will be the best-selling car or truck of any kind next year, quite likely. So, I mean, if he's right, it could be the best-selling car on Earth next year.
So next year.
He said there was a greater than 50% chance.
So next year, so that would be
2022.
2022. So let's just think Gigafactory, both Berlin and Austin should probably be completed by then and pumping out Model Ys.
Right. So
I see no reason why it won't dominate.
Yeah. He said FSD beta is the hardest technical problem that has ever existed. Wow.
So, okay. I mean, I believe it. It's never been done before.
And here's the part that blew my mind. They're trying to solve that problem with a 70 or 80 watt computer. So I want you to just look at the desktop computer that's on your desk. That thing probably uses like 500 watts. They have to make a computer that uses 70 or 80 watts and solves the most complicated technical problem that has ever existed. Now, he said the elimination of radar is actually good because it's getting rid of one of the last crutches that they were using, which, I mean, we've been trying to figure out why they're getting rid of it. And I guess what he's really trying to drive home here is he said they're highly confident they're going to get this done. And he really thinks they can do it with just the cameras.
It makes sense. I don't have a radar chip in my head. As much as I would like one, I haven't needed it.
Right.
I haven't gotten into an accident, although I guess my car has one. So, but I think I think most people are able to get by without any radar. And as Elon was talking about, basically, the car is never going to be texting. It's never going to be drunk. Right. It's always going to be paying attention, and it has a faster than human reaction time. So therefore, it should do pretty well.
Right. All these great numbers we're talking about in Q1, you have to put the backdrop behind it, which Elon said Q1 was some of the most difficult supply chain challenges ever. They had chip shortages, and they even said that in China, because of COVID restrictions on the engineers there, that they had to ship a lot of the powertrains from Giga Nevada. So, I mean, they had all these problems going on that we barely knew about, and yet they still had a record quarter.
He also mentioned that the S and X have more challenges than expected in making them plaid. They have to make sure that the battery is going to be safe, but they are going to start delivery of those next month.
Yeah, with Q3 seeing high deliveries of the Model S, and then they'll actually start minor deliveries of the Model X in Q3. They're aiming to produce over 2,000 a week, contingent on global supply. So it does sound like that there are some supply problems that they're still trying to iron out.
But this is amazing. This is the first quarter that Tesla has gone without selling the Model S or X since they started to make those vehicles.
Yeah.
And they were able to do it profitably. They were able to sell cars that were cheaper than the Model S and X, which was kind of the whole goal of Tesla to begin with.
Yep.
And the Model S and X that they're going to come out with next month are going to be fantastic.
You know, they said that the refreshed Model S and X are actually going to cost them less to produce than the old Model S and X.
I totally believe it.
A better vehicle costs them less to make. Crazy. Another interesting thing I picked up on is that the future product line is going to be Semi, Cybertruck, Roadster, and other products. And they were very tight-lipped on that. They didn't, is it Model 2? Is it HVAC products?
Right.
What is
it? Bus?
Right.
Is it? I mean, there's so many things that it could be, and they're being very tight-lipped. My guess is that when things start to open up later this year, that maybe we're going to get announcements and fun. Come see the next unveiling of whatever the mystery machine might be.
I hope so. Zachary Kirkhorn, who is the CFO, talked a little bit. And one thing he mentioned was that they're still guiding for exceeding 50% growth this year and then 50% growth for the foreseeable future. Again, amazing for a company that's worth $700 billion to have that kind of growth.
Exactly. So then the call went to the say.com questions, and they started with retail investor questions. So just as a background, if you haven't heard of this before, there is this website called say.com. So retail investors can actually ask questions and then up and down vote questions based on the number of shares that they have. So that kind of is how it works to vote. So that way retail investors can get their questions answered, and it's not just the analysts and the institutional investors.
It's really cool that Tesla takes these questions first.
Yeah.
Well, there's still a lot of energy. And so this question, which has 581,000 shares behind it, is how is Dojo coming along? Could Dojo unlock an AWS-like business line for Tesla over the next few years? And basically the answer was yes. Elon said this could be used by others. He said that Dojo is 10 times more cost efficient, both in cost and energy usage per frame, than the next best solution. I think the biggest thing I took away from the answer to this was that Elon said people will think of us as an AI and robotics company as much as a car and energy company down the road. Think about that for a second.
That's Amazon level. Because, remember, Amazon started as a bookseller.
Right.
And now you're like, oh, remember that?
Right.
That's so funny. Now I don't know what they are.
Next question from over 500,000 shares is the recent price changes on Solar Roof have been a bit discouraging for customers and investors. Could Tesla share more about Solar Roof challenges and if the outlook is changed at all?
Elon said that the demand for Solar Roof remains strong. It choked at the installation point, basically, that they, as we talked about before, roofs were more complex than they had anticipated. It took longer, cost more. So that was definitely a tripping point for them. But now it sounds like with the addition of the Powerwall 2 Plus, which are for Powerwalls that were made the November of last year and forward, they're going to be able to basically just hook up solar directly into the Powerwall, and then that is going to be the gateway and the inverter for the entire solar system, and that is why they are also going to be selling the Powerwall with solar products. I mean, it's a great synergy, and that is going to hopefully lower costs for consumers.
Well, and then he doubled down on what I've been talking about a lot, which is VPP, virtual power plants. He said, giant distributed utility. Extremely profound and necessary. Basically, what he's talking about is that we need 3 times the electricity that we currently have if you include electric heat and electric vehicles. And so he said this very interesting statement. He said, this is going to be a prosperous future for Tesla and utilities. He's not saying, hey, utilities, we're going to come and put you out of business. He's like, hey, if you can't provide all this power that your customers are going to need, you're going to be in trouble. So work with us, because this is the next generation of power generation, is virtual power plants.
He mentioned Texas, which was very smart. And he talked again about all the solar that you need is a 100 by 100 square mile piece of, like Arizona desert could power the entire country. But obviously you can take that 100 by 100 mile, speck of land and distribute it across all the rooftops of America. And you're probably going to get pretty darn close to all of the energy needs.
Yeah, he sounded very confident that batteries plus solar is the answer.
And he said that lithium-ion batteries could be the only form of battery storage. So, I mean, we've been talking a lot on this channel about other forms of energy storage. He's saying that you don't need any of them. Lithium-ion could do all of it, and that he was very confident about it, which, okay.
This question from Emmett, Master of Coin. Can you tell us anything about Tesla's future plans in digital currency space, or when any such major developments might be revealed?
So it was an interesting answer. Basically, they talked about how they invested the $1.5 billion and then sold 10% of that. And their answer was that they needed to have liquidity.
Yeah. And they were very pleased that Bitcoin has been very liquid.
Right. Both very liquid and also very profitable. I mean, Tesla is the one company that can't invest in Tesla stock in order to make more money. So, I think it was a pretty good answer and pretty interesting idea. I think that it was a smart bet by Tesla. They did it at the right time. And, $1.5 billion, it sounds crazy to say, wasn't a terribly big bet for Tesla since they have about $20 billion in the bank.
All right, so this was an interesting question. Does Tesla have any proactive plans to tackle mainstream media's imminent, massive, and deceptive clickbait headline campaigns on safety of autopilot, full self-driving, perhaps a specialty PR job of some sort? And I didn't think they were going to get into this, but they actually talked about what happened in the Texas crash that we just talked about on Tesla Time News yesterday. I couldn't understand all of the answers because I think I misheard some of the answers. I heard that, first of all, things we knew, that auto steer did not and could not engage. So we knew that before. But they talked about the fact that it only accelerated to 30 miles an hour.
I think that we must have misheard that. That was definitely not true. Looking at the accident. They also said that the steering wheel was deformed, meaning that there probably was a driver in the vehicle, which is something we talked about on the bonus stories. And they said that all the seatbelts were unbuckled.
So Tesla said they're working with NTSB, local authorities, and NHTSA, and they're doing a study to understand what happened. It sounds like we're going to get a lot of information out of this because it sounds like they have some of the data.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if more details emerge about this accident.
Yeah.
So the very next question that they could have answered, and I wish that they had answered this question, but they didn't get to it. They went straight to institutional investors, and I'm so mad about it.
Which one?
It was this question. It is extremely frustrating to have to go through Elon's Twitter to do feature requests and bug report recognition, and I often feel like Tesla's development efforts don't align with customer needs. Can we please get a Tesla official community feedback system with up and down voting? And this is exactly what moretesla.com is. So if you haven't heard of that before, it's exactly what Kevin P was asking in his question. It just isn't official by Tesla. They don't use it as far as we know.
I bet Fred would license it to them if they asked nicely. So, I mean, head over to moretesla.com. Check it out. It's really cool. You can put in your own ideas that you have for things you want to see in Teslas, or you might already find what's there, and then you can upvote things so that those get seen the most.
And we're not like sponsored by More Tesla or anything.
No, it's just a really cool site.
We know Fred, who's the owner of it. He's a really great guy and made a really nice site. I really want this question to get answered, so maybe next time we can upvote that question again, and maybe Q2, we're going to be talking about, oh, it's so great that Elon listened to investors and is working on some version of something. Hopefully. Knock on wood. We'll see. So then Tesla went through about 3 or 4 institutional say.com questions. They were all boring. Honestly, they were not that interesting. Elon didn't really have too much to say about them other than explaining, just basic like solar energy to people.
Yeah, I mean,
stuff.
he got less and less interested as the call went on. He really is interested in the retail investor questions, I think, and then he just loses interest at this point.
Because honestly, he likes questions of people who are very well informed. And oddly enough, the retail investors in this company know more than a lot of the analysts.
Yep.
And a lot of the analysts, maybe they know a lot, but all they want to ask is like boring, like nitty gritty kind of questions that I just don't see Elon ever really answering that well.
Right.
But then we went on to the other analysts' questions. So we start with Pierre.
Yeah, and he was asking, how much progress has there been since Battery Day? How's the pilot line doing? What's the production ramp like? And we didn't get too much out of them, but we did hear a couple little things. One is, that we've heard this before. They want to have 10 gigawatt hours a year at Cato Road. But what I was kind of surprised to hear is that it doesn't sound like they actually have the battery cell in the place that they want it yet. They're not putting it into cars yet. And I kind of thought by now there would have been happy with it. So it's not quite there. And Elon said probably about 18 months away from volume production of the 4680. Now, that's not a surprise. I mean, we heard at Battery Day that it was a 3-year time frame. So it's not like we thought the next day they'd have them. But it's interesting to see that like they're working on it.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that he said that they weren't reliable enough yet. I think that might have something to do with the tabless design, or basically the multi-tab fold-down design. My guess is that might be what's holding them up, because a jelly roll and a aluminum casing probably aren't what's slowing them down. I mean, they've set themselves up pretty well in terms of batteries. They're doing much better than all their competitors.
And Elon made a really big point of saying we're not like against our suppliers. We actually are working with Cattle, Panasonic, and LG to make sure that they can actually keep up with supply. So he said, basically we'll buy all that you can supply us with as long as the prices are good. So it sounds like he's just making sure they know that like we're working with you guys. We need to make all the batteries we can.
Yep.
There's a couple more questions. One from Dan Levy from Credit Suisse was asking about, COGS reduction. All I heard that was really interesting was that the Model Y had a reduced body part count by as much as 60%. And I mean, that's amazing if you think about the fact that that's only a couple models down the line from Model S and X. And now they've already been able to reduce the number of parts by 60%.
And I bet that's from the first Model Ys that they've produced, because I think that rear casting, along with maybe some other castings that we haven't seen yet, could lead to massively reduced parts in the car. Yeah, and I just want to stress that it's really the making of the thing that is difficult. And every little piece that you have means that now you have to go pick up the piece, attach it somehow to make a vehicle. If you can just cast it all together, you completely remove all of those steps, and the steps are what costs the money. It's not necessarily just the materials.
Yeah, I mean, Elon talked about this during the call, that it's insanely hard to produce at scale and at low cost. And, he talked about how many aneurysms they've gone through. I think that overall, this was a fantastic earning report and call. But will the stock respond? And I mean, I think what we have to keep in mind is that so many people look at this company wrong. They look at it as a car company, and the big number, the big thing that was out earlier this month was deliveries. And so if you look at the stock chart here, I think baked into the stock price right now is the fact that everyone thought, okay, well, deliveries were high, so this will be a good quarter. And so I think what we're going to probably see, if you're, a trader, is you're probably going to see the stock either pull back over the next week or two, or just kind of skate along flat. But I think you'd be missing the point. What we're talking about on the call here, what really excites Elon, was the energy, was the full self-driving, things that you're not going to see in the next quarter. These are things that are a little ways down the road. And speaking of down the road, we're going to start to see Giga Berlin and Giga Austin. And these are going to be massive. And I don't think that's really baked into the stock price yet.
I can't believe that Tesla was able to achieve the numbers of deliveries that they did this quarter with just 2 factories. I mean, it's important to keep, yes, they have Giga Nevada, but it's not like a car factory doesn't produce the cars. So I really think that these 2 new Gigafactories that are going to come in, just look at what happened to their global sales when Giga China got built. Imagine that times 2, and imagine that in Europe now. It's finally you're going to be able to buy a car that was made in Europe. That's hasn't happened before. The tariffs are going to go way down. It's going to be a big deal.
Yeah. I don't even think baked into the stock price is the fact that the Model Y could be the best-selling car in the world in a year. There's so many big things coming for Tesla that I don't think most of us can even imagine or grasp. Because even if you've been following this company from the beginning, each time they do something amazing, it's just almost incomprehensible. I still have not wrapped my head around Giga Shanghai. I got to be honest, it keeps blowing my mind every time I look at it, and the scale and the fact that now it's not just 1 car being made there, it's 2 models. This is amazing.
Right. I still can't wrap my head around the Model Y.
Yeah.
That they were able to take a Model 3 and make it so much more usable and better without making it like, all top heavy. I'm an SUV. It looks and feels just like a Model 3, basically. I think that is fantastic, and it looks good still.
And no talk on this earnings call of Cybertruck. And Cybertruck is going to be amazing.
I wasn't even... there's not enough room in my brain for me to think about Cybertruck. Right. It's... I can focus on it, one at a time.
Right.
I feel like a goldfish because, when Tesla finally comes out with the Cybertruck, I think that, again, is going to be another nail in the coffin for all of these other ICE manufacturers. And it's really going to open a lot of people's eyes to electric vehicles. And, you might say, but maybe the Cybertruck sales won't be that good. It's like, A, think you're wrong.
To differ.
B, as soon as you get trucks into people's hands who have never driven an electric car before, replacing their Ford F-150s, it's going to replace all the Ford Focuses and all the other smaller cars with, hey, you should get a Model 3. It's so much better and so less maintenance. So I'm so excited about the future. This earnings report was fantastic. I remember, 2 or 3 years ago, we were doing earnings reports and we were saying, okay, they didn't make a profit this quarter, but don't worry, guys. In the future, they will. And here we are in the future. They're making a great profit and great promise.
Yeah. And if you think we're kidding, just go back a couple of years. All the videos are down there, and you'll see that this is true. Yep. We were talking about the stock price, and don't forget, there's been a 1-to-5 split here. So, when you're thinking about the stock price, we were talking about it when it was down here. So I'm super pumped.
Yeah.
This was awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited to be here for you. And you might have noticed this is in depth, but it came out on a Tuesday.
Yes.
And that's because we're trying to keep it timely for you. Why wait till Friday?
We literally are recording it right now. It is 7:48. It's literally like 1 hour after the earnings call finished.
Right.
We are here recording the show so that you can watch it tomorrow, which is today. We do so much hard work on this channel. Please consider subscribing and supporting us over on patreon.com/nowyouknow. We'll see you next week.
Now you know.